Welcome to Flashpoints. I'm Jeff Pegues. Joining me from New York, CBS News senior national security analyst Juan Zarate. The city of Ramadi, Juan, as you know, has fallen to ISIS. There has been a lot of discussion over the last several days of the significance of this loss on the battlefield. Why is it important?
Well, Jeff, this is a significant moment in the battle against ISIS, in part because there had been an attempt by the U.S. coalition and Iraqi forces to take back more of the territory in Al-Anbar, western Iraq. Ramadi, the capital of Al-Anbar, symbolically very important, also tactically important because it is on the way to Mosul, the second largest city in Iraq, which ISIS still controls. And so it's significant that the Iraqi forces weren't able to hold the territory. It's significant because the march toward greater control of territory in western Iraq seems stalled, if not moving in reverse. And most importantly, perhaps, Jeff, it raises serious questions about the viability of the current strategy to rely on Iraqi forces to retake areas in Iraq to push back ISIS's advance. And that's leading to great debates in Washington as well as in Baghdad as to whether or not the strategy is even viable now.
Well, so what is the next piece of strategy from this administration? Where do they go next with this now that they know that Ramadi has fallen to ISIS?
Well, President Obama has gathered some of his national security advisors to talk about both the fall of Ramadi and what comes next. To your point, there aren't a lot of great options. The reality is we have to rely on proxy forces on the ground. A question for the Iraqis is whether or not they rely on the Shia militias and groups to move in to these Sunni-dominated territories. That's not good or helpful because that has the potential of creating greater sectarian strife and creating longer-term instability. There's a question as to whether or not more arms and aid can be given to the Sons of Iraq, these Iraqi tribes that had allied with American forces in the past, whether or not that can be accelerated. And frankly, whether or not there needs to be more of a U.S. presence or allied presence on the ground as opposed to simply from the air. And I think those are all options on the table. But the reality is this is a long-term battle. We're going to have to be patient to a certain extent. But the reality is the Islamic State is not giving up much territory. And if you look at the map, including in Syria, they're actually gaining ground. And so this is not going well, and the president knows that. And so that's why he's evaluating his options along with the Iraqis.
You know, there had been some discussion in recent weeks about ISIS losing ground. And I recall some U.S. officials saying that. So what is the real story there? Are they gaining ground, losing ground, or is this the ebb and flow of the battlefield?
Jeff, you're exactly right. And we talked about it on Flashpoints. You have to be careful about calling the game too soon or too early because the battle lines are shifting every day. But the reality is, without the ability to move out the Islamic State forces from these key population centers, without the ability to reinforce local proxies and to gain momentum, we are going to be in this situation where the battle lines are shifting, and one day it looks like we're advancing, the next day it looks like we're losing. The reality, though, is you have Syria in the backdrop with the Islamic State gaining ground with very little pressure in Syria against the Islamic State, and obviously in western Iraq, the Islamic State able to hold its ground with big battles looming, like how do you retake Mosul, the second largest city in Iraq? I mean, these are major issues, and all the while, the Islamic State is gaining momentum, gaining ideological adherence, and Jeff, as you know well from your reporting, foreign fighters from around the world. And so this is a dangerous elixir, and the question is, do we need to accelerate or quicken our response to the Islamic State?
All right, that is a good question, and we'll see where this goes next. Juan Zarate, I'm Jeff Pegues, and that is Flashpoints.